2 years ago, we were playing Tekken 7, because Tekken 8 wasn't out. But the Tekken team released early footage for us to kind of react to and get a sneak peek at what was coming. And as a Tekken creator back then, I expressed a lot of concern. I created a little video talking about how I thought Tekken 7 was going downhill, how the design philosophy was moving away from what made Tekken good. And I thought it would be the perfect time, where Tekken is a hot button issue, to revisit that video and see if I was right. Was I right about Bandai Namco sending Tekken down the wrong direction? Did I miss some things? It's the perfect time for a retrospective. I also had an insane haircut. Let's check it out.
Hey everyone, it's PhiDX. The Tekken 8 trailer just came out, and they teased some new mechanics that I want to explore from a competitor's perspective. Timestamps are below, play it in 2x speed if you need to. Let's get started. Here's an interview with Harada on IGN. This is what he says about the new heat system.
Okay, so yeah, first thing is like this big article that talks about their design philosophy. And it's actually interesting to go back and listen to. I'll just summarize it because you can watch the video if you wanted to. They talk about focusing on aggression. We already know that. They want the person attacking to feel good. I think that is the biggest thing. It's people enjoy themselves by creating advantage and pushing that advantage rather than feeling successful when they turtle up. What's interesting is Tekken 8 has characters that do benefit from turtling up or playing kind of a bit more passively. Like Jun Kazama is a good example. Asuka is a good example. Xiao Yu, also a pretty good example. And those characters have strong mix-ups too. And I think it's up for debate whether they're most effectively played as turtles, but turtling is still a valid portion of a strategy in this game. Let's see. One of the things the trailer introduces new heat system. Yeah, so they talk about introducing heat as well, and then they didn't even go into details yet. So cool stuff. Now this is the early footage of Tekken 8.
Aggressive, and how that's exactly going to be implemented into the gameplay. I'm gonna pull up the trailer here, and we'll take a quick look. So you can see that Lars does a forward left kick here, or in Tekken we call it forward 3, and then he cancels into this running animation. So this move does actually exist in Tekken 7. It just doesn't have a follow-up. It's a safe mid that gives a knockdown.
So this is the first time we saw heat dashes, right? Like heat dashing is so common now, but this was actually pretty interesting to me. I remember I tried to keep it like really neutral when I reviewed it, but I thought Lars' move was really sick.
The Tekken 8 trailer,
and I thought it was kind of crazy that it could turn into this combo. I didn't know any of the properties or anything like that.
Into a full combo. You can see it picks him up here. Right after, here's Jin doing some kind of running right punch. In Tekken, we call it a running 2. You could see that Kazuya blocks it, but the stagger animation makes it look like he's completely unable to act. This reminds me of a few things.
There's another detail I didn't mention here, is that they kind of wanted you to see that there was counterplay early in this trailer, right? So if you look here, Jin does 4-4-2 heat dash.
Running 2. You could see that Kazuya...
And then Kazuya ducks like the stance after, right? So it's not truly dealing with the mix-up after, because Jin did do a mid with the knee.
Blocks it,
right? But they wanted to show like this dynamic, yes, Jin is pushing the offense, but there's counterplay on defense.
In Tekken, we call it a running 2. You could see that Kazuya...
And I don't think that's a foolproof way of looking at the game. It's just something they like to do. They like to show that, hey, there's a counter here. Whether or not the counter is reasonable or not, or kind of like in-depth enough. Like yes, you could duck a launch punishable low, but if the character has so many reasons to make you not want to duck, it's not really a reasonable weakness. I think that's an important thing to point out. Moves exist in the context of the moveset, right? Weaknesses of moves exist in the context of the weaknesses of the other moves of a character.
This reminds me of a few things Tekken 7 introduced. The first thing is the...
Okay, yeah. So this is me relating these heat dash situations, the forced mix-up here, to some new Tekken 7 features that were just added to the game at that time.
Unable to act. This reminds me of a few things Tekken 7
that wall crush.
The first thing is the newest mechanic that came in the latest patch after Evo.
Now, if you play Tekken 8, you've seen this. This used to be what every heat dash did at the wall.
The first thing is the newest mechanic.
Now some characters just get it. Yeah, this little bounce off the wall.
Evo. The game calls it wall crush, but the community calls it new tactics from the initial announcement. The base.
Then I talk about new tactics, or the wall crush, from some of the characters who used it the best, like Claudio and Elisa.
The concept is when the defender is at the wall, a wall crush puts them in crouch, and usually at so much frame disadvantage that they have to guess. They can't sidestep, backdash, or press a button. You can see here after I do this.
So Claudio's running 2, put him at plus 21 in this wall crush state. In the open, it's plus 6. It's the same move from Tekken 8, except it doesn't heat engage. but at the wall it was plus 21 without spending resources, right? So let's keep going.
Jack is minus 21. For reference, the generic fastest move is a jab at 10 frames. So if Jack tries to press anything, he'll get counter hit.
Yeah, and then I'm just showing that situation after.
Types of wall crushes, but the most powerful ones are Claudio's wall running right punch, also known as a wall running 2. Elisa's
was only plus 16, but it was still ridiculous.
Wall running 2, and Dragunov's forward left kick.
And Dragunov's was plus 17. Dragunov was really bad in this game, but he had one of those high advancing wall crushes. Yes, again, you can duck at the wall, right? But the whole reason why that's scary is because Claudio wants you to duck at the wall in the first place, right?
Reference, the generic fastest move is a jab at
like this mid here.
Tries to press anything, he'll get counter.
He still has this in Tekken 8. Yes, down forward 3-1, wall splatting mid, right? He also has the back one, tons of options there. Going plus 21 means that he can now frame trap you with a wall splatting mid, and your only option is to stand block or duck, right? In Tekken 8, when you get put in a wall crush situation, is still messed up. But when you get hit in like put in a heat dash situation, right? You can still sidestep. You can still power crush yourself and like convert into your own pressure. But at minus 21, you can't power crush. It will hit you before your armor can come out. That's pretty insane.
Left kick or forward 3. These are all fast, safe, advancing high moves.
These were like even more oppressive than they are now.
Crush state that you're now in a forced mix-up. I'll talk about why forced mix-ups are problematic in just a second. The other mechanic this trailer reminds me of are Tekken 7's plus frame rage drives. The two immediate examples are Claudio's rage drive and Lars's rage drive.
So if you guys have played Tekken 8, this is going to look familiar, right? Claudio back forward 2, heat dash. This was kind of the prototype for that. His is plus 7 in this game, right? It would spend your rage. So in this game, the only resource is whether you were in rage or not. So once you're in rage, you could use rage art or you could use rage drive, which is kind of like heat dashes or heat smashes from Tekken 8. Here, yeah, Claudio could spend it to do plus 7. Or to get plus 7, or it would be a full combo launch like it is now.
The two immediate examples are Claudio's rage drive and Lars's rage drive. Claudio's is a safe mid-mid string that cancels into a forward dash. He has big frame advantage after, plus 7 if you're a curious nerd like me. So not only is it a free launch attempt for Claudio, but the defender has to guess a mix-up right after.
Yeah, so free launch attempt and a mix-up after. Tekken 8 has kept that, but with a few extra details. Let's look at Lars's. This is going to look familiar too.
Similar, except that he's forced into a stance and doesn't have
Sen 1 heat dash,
options,
but
still at so much of a disadvantage.
Lars goes into stance again.
That he
Instead of heat dashing to neutral, he heat dashes and goes into stance. So it's an even more messed up mix-up.
Can't be interrupted. He can't be moved around, and you have to just guess the mix-up.
At plus 9.
Lars's rage drive can even lead into a wall crush. So if you get hit, you have to guess again.
Look at that, yeah. He gets plus 9, can play this hell sweep,
into
wall crush into guess again.
So if you get hit,
right, and then the mid comes out as if, and somebody would pick a better mid if they actually played Lars.
Again. So why is this trend of mechanic?
So these are so familiar, right? Like design patterns from late Tekken 7 look so similar to what we have now in Tekken 8, but in Tekken 7, sidestepping was so much worse. So the kind of forced mix-up situations were even more ugly because you truly had to guess 50-50. Tekken 8 also gives you some options for mitigating this in neutral, right? Like the idea that you can impose your own aggression to control your opponent, that you can play sidesteps, restricts your opponent's ability to just throw these out, right? But in Tekken 7, it was so scary to attack because of low parries being full launchers, counter hits being so prevalent, and every character having like nuke moves, right? And you didn't have the movement, like the sidesteps to get around these nuke moves, right? So when somebody got into rage, you kind of just had to hold it. You had to let them play around, blow their rage before you could really play the game again, right? You had to sit there and take it.
Concerning. In the past.
Now, this is a cool concept that I'm about to talk about here. I forgot that I was about to talk about it. I talk about how historically in Tekken, somebody mentioned that Tekken 7 was my first Tekken, and that was insane to me. Tekken 7 was my first like competitive Tekken, where I actually went to tournaments, but I had studied the game prior. And the reason this is important is because I talk about in this next section kind of the fundamental basis that Tekken offense and defense had been built on prior to late Tekken 7 and Tekken 8. Check it out.
Past, Tekken was heavily built on the idea of earning your mix-up. So Tekken 7 has way less of this, but I can actually demonstrate it briefly here with these two legacy characters. So I'm controlling Jin on the left, and here's Kazuya on the right. Kazuya has a strong 50-50 mix-up. He has his low sweep that knocks you down, called his hell sweep, or his forward left kick, a mid that launches you and starts a combo. The timing is pretty similar, so it's a true 50-50, except both of these moves are beaten by sidestep left.
Right, so you know this, right? If you don't want to guess mid or low, characters with strong mid-low like mix-ups in the past had usually some kind of weakness in the third dimension, right? You could sidestep left, the forward 3, or the hell sweep if you know the timing that your opponent's attacking at. Timing being the key word.
So if you have a read that Kazuya is going for a mix-up between these two moves, you don't have to guess. Tekken lets you sidestep to beat both. So in high-level Tekken, an obvious Kazuya mix-up will lead to an easy sidestep left launch. How does Kazuya counter this? Well, a sidestep is only evasive for a brief window. You can check out this video for an in-depth dive on the mechanics. So if Kazuya delays his attack and dashes again, his next attack will catch that sidestep.
So if you're wondering how sidestep works, pay attention.
Notice how I'm sidestepping when he dashes up into me, but because he delays his attack, it ends up following me. In other words, delaying your attack realigns that attack.
Yeah, so he's inputting a forward dash before doing the mix-up.
So the mind game for the defender is, do I sidestep just as Kazuya dashes at me? Or do I think he's going to realign his mix-up, wait one dash, and then sidestep? Or if Kazuya is just dashing in my face, trying to read my sidestep, why don't I just hit him? What if I try to hit him, and he decides to stand still, and then I get whiff punished?
This is like the neutral triangle, right? If my opponent's going to mix me up, right? Do you guess the mix-up or do you like sidewalk, right? But if you don't want to guess, you can also play keep out. So if your opponent is keeping you out, as say the Kazuya, then you have options too, right? This is the keep out option where you're dashing in your face to threaten the mix-up and you just get hit.
Trying to read my sidestep.
Counter to that,
why don't I just hit him?
What is baiting with a whiff punish?
If I try to hit him and he decides to stand still and then
right? All based on movement. And that's what makes Tekken so cool. Historically, is it's not just moving for the sake of moving. You move to kind of stimulate an opponent's response, right? And once you've stimulated what you want to stimulate, then you can punish, right? You can take advantage of that. And Tekken 7 had already started eating away at that dynamic in this game.
I get whiff punished.
Based on what you saw earlier, which is like all the forced mix-up situations, the nerfed sidesteps, things like that. It was often less effective to play this style of offense and defense in Tekken 7. I just demonstrated it here because it's still very visible, right? You can still see it happen. It's just, it was already not that good to do, again, because there were stronger options like playing your nuke buttons, and fishing for low parries and fishing for counter hits.
For one 50-50 mix-up, this kind of option countering rapidly changes depending on the spacings of each character. Because each character's threats change depending on the spacing they're at, you have to know specific sidesteps for specific moves at specific timings depending on the spacing you are at versus that one character. This is the beauty of earning your mix-up in Tekken. Old Tekkens heavily rewarded a deep understanding of what options your opponent wanted to cover, and then punishing them for those specifically. This is why you see old high-level Korean gameplay showing mostly forward dashes and sidesteps.
Look at all the wave dashes.
Threatening mix-ups with their forward movement and seeing how the defender is stepping or swinging. That tells
this is actually so crazy. Do you see what happened here? JDCR, let's do it. He counted, let's count how many wave dashes he did.
And then punishing them for those specifically. This is why you see old high-level
1, 2, 3, 4,
showing mostly
and knee sidesteps. The last one.
Forward dashes and sidesteps.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And seeing
attack.
How the defender is.
And knee read the 5th timing, right? They were not just moving for the sake of moving. Every move, every wave dash was an attack threat. And on the 5th one, knee decided to act. He was observing. He made his play then.
Stepping or swinging. That tells the attacker what options the defender is looking for and gives information on timing and strategy, assuming you know your options and the opponent's. So for example, if I know that you're trying to
look at this, and then knee does 2 wave dashes, his low gets sidestepped, and then Armor King punishes.
And the opponent's. So for example, if I know that you're trying to sidestep my mix-up, I might
Sorry,
just dash
3.
in.
He did
and see what
1,
you do.
delayed, and
If
then
you
did 2
sidestep again,
sidesteps.
and I know you're looking for that mix-up specifically, so I can choose something else that'll hit you. It's no longer just reading attacks, but also reading movement patterns and defensive patterns to get in your opponent's head. All of this is
Right, it's no longer just doing attacks, it's using movement patterns and defensive patterns to apply pressure and make reads on what your opponent responds to. Now, this is an important point. Let me finish hearing myself talk, and then we'll talk about that.
built on a flexible neutral game where you have all of your movement options available to counter multiple attack options. But the counter is if you're wrong and get red, you can get hit. If you try to press your way out of this movement-based game, you can whiff or get counter hit and lose a ton of HP. So in these new forced mixed-up situations, the defender loses access to sidesteps or button challenges. Normally that's not terrible, but the worst part is that the move that leads to that situation, so when Claudio does his rage drive before he gets that mix-up, that move itself can't be sidestepped or backdashed reliably.
Okay, so a lot of things just happened. Let's start by talking what I'm about to talk about here. So you're going to see that these wall crush moves look concerning, right? Tekken 8 has similar concerns. There are moves that lead to insane mix-up situations after, right? There's a reason why I think Tekken 8 does this better than Tekken 7 did, and this is what I'm about to talk about.
Even if I know when Claudio is going to do his rage drive, I can't sidestep it in either direction.
Look at that.
So even if I've taken the time to understand his timing and learn his offense, because of the power of that button, I have to sit there and guess.
This is what I'm saying when I say every character has nukes that you can't counter, right?
He sidestepped or
Yes, the move leads to +7 or a full combo, just like a heat dash. But what makes this move really stupid
backdashed
is
reliably.
you can't move
Even if
around
I
it.
know when
Right? You
Claudio
can't
is
move around
going
it. The
to do
back
his
3
rage drive.
here is -4, meaning I should have extra time to succeed in this sidestep. But no matter which way I pick,
can't side
I get tracked. I get tracked by this homing plus frame launcher.
step it in either direction. So even if I've taken the time to understand his timing and learn his offense,
Right? Even though I've taken the time to understand his timing and offense, what did we like about that Tekken? Assuming you like that Tekken Tag 2 gameplay like I do. If you like traditional Tekken, you'll probably like that. What did we like about that? It was applying all this pressure to observe and counter. But in Tekken 7, no amount of observation will let you counter this. Right? If you power crush, Claudio's second hit actually lets him recover, and he won't get hit by the armor move. You literally have to block.
because of the power of that
If you
button,
want to get technical, you could try to jab him out of it, but that back 3 knee was the second hit was a counter hit launcher, so it didn't make sense to do. Like, blocking was your highest statistical chance of playing solid Tekken, right?
I have to sit there and guess. In other words, Claudio has a true no-risk launch attempt, and if he fails that launch attempt, it turns into an unavoidable mix-up. And because of that, it creates a situation where the opponent, even if they have incredible defense, even if they have incredible reads, their observation is on point, their conditioning is really strong. Because of the power of this button, they're forced to sit there and flip a coin. And as the attacker, instead of moving to gain info and try and threaten options to understand what your opponent is doing, moves like these create a situation where it's better to just press it and hope that it works.
It's a reduction of depth for both sides. You are incentivized to just do the button, and your opponent is incentivized to just block, no matter which observations both of you have made at that time. I promise this is exactly how it felt as a tournament, world-traveling Tekken 7 player. That is really what it was about. You would make small reads on maybe your opponent's impatience if they started attacking in neutral, but you were not making observations on their defensive habits. You were not making observations. Well, you were, but it was not reasonable risk-reward-wise to cash out on it. For example, trying to sidestep here is not only bad because the move is effectively homing, but the second hit of the knee that started this situation, again, counter hit launches. In Tekken 8, it's not a counter hit launcher. So if you mash into it, in an attempt to stop his pressure, all you take is a knockdown. You get to get up and interact again. There's an exchange of information that doesn't lead to the loss of the round. this is going to be my key point, and you already see it below a little bit.
Safe, you're not going to get killed for it, and the reward is so high, you can pretty much kill your opponent just by hitting that move. This is a concerning trend that each patch of Tekken 7 seems to add in. Bakuram's jet kick is a high homing launching move that gives frame advantage. Noctis's Shadow Scissors is a safe, mid, unparryable, evasive, advancing counter hit launcher. The risks of these moves are either non-existent or require a super hard read from the defender, and that's way less interesting than rewarding skillful decision-making from the defender, skillful observation to understand what the opponent's attack patterns are. The new heat system looks like an extension of this design philosophy, where if you're going to beat it, it either has to be a super hard read, or you're just going to have to sit there and guess a mix-up after.
And this was the primary concern, and is the continuing concern for many Tekken 8 fans. What wasn't clear from this footage, and wasn't clear until the later defensive patches in the game, is that they want you to use sidesteps and use power crushes and use your own offense to prevent your opponent from doing this in the first place. So whereas in Tekken Tag 2, you used movement as both offensive pressure and offensive control and defensive control, right? If you swing willy-nilly into an opponent with good movement, their defense is going to be too good. It will apply pressure to you as the attacker. Similarly, as the defender, if you don't have good defense, your opponent can just move in your face to mix you up on their attack timing and then blow you up when they make a strong prediction on you. Movement was that game's pressure and control. Tekken 8 uses the same concepts, but with attack buttons. So your move set is your pressure and control, both offensively and defensively. Now, that is a point of contention for many players, but what I like about the system, and where I think I was wrong in my initial assessment, is this element of observation and countering. Tekken 8 gives you many interactions to survive. You don't die in 2 hits, right? You have the gray health system to help you recover combo damage, unless you're fighting Heihachi. And you have tons of movement in neutral and strong buttons to fight back, right? To deny your opponent free pressure. That element of observe and counter, pressure, observe, and then counter, is what Tekken 8 has restored, right? It's so popular to hate on Tekken 8 right now. But even though it's a very mashy game, it's a very aggressive, button-heavy game, they've restored this concept of pressure, observe, and then counter. Tekken 7, you didn't have this, right? You would apply pressure by doing as little as possible, because counter hits and low parries are the strongest when your opponent has to attack you and you're not showing anything, right? If I'm punching you, you know I can't low parry you or counter hit you with like a jab if I'm jabbing, right? So if I know you always jab here, that removes like a jump scare opportunity, right? If you think of counter hits and low parries as jump scares, the more you show, the less scary it is. Tekken 8 has changed this from a passive, reduced interaction style of Tekken to a high interactivity style of Tekken. So even though it doesn't look the same because it's button heavy rather than movement heavy, which I personally also prefer movement heavy Tekken. But even though it's shifted from this, that core concept, this like fighting game idea of stimulating your opponent to respond a certain way, observing how they do it, and then countering that, is what's come back with Tekken 8. Let's keep watching.
Total, this would just reduce the amount of interaction in games.
Let's rewind. I don't remember what I said.
It either has to be a super hard read, or you're just going to have to sit there and guess a mix-up after. In total, this would just reduce the amount of interaction in games. If you saw the EVO Grand Final...
So I said it would reduce interaction, but coming back from the post-defensive patch of Tekken 8, patch like 1.04, I believe, they've clearly tried to increase interaction with the gray health system, with less counter hit launchers, low parries not doing full combos, power crush being an answer to throws. You're encouraged to interact more. And I think a more interactive Tekken, regardless if we agree on movement or moveset being the preferred way of interacting, I think a more interactive Tekken is actually better.
Between Knee and Khan, you'll notice that
this is the EVO 2022 Grand Finals between Knee and Khan. And look at how little Knee interacts with what Geese is doing. He does a lot of defensive movement and jabs, because that's all he can do against Geese's moveset
in games. If you saw the EVO Grand Final between Knee and Khan, you'll notice that Knee is mostly backdashing and jabbing.
Right.
And the reason is, it's simply too risky to try to impose an offense on Geese. His ability to blow you up for almost any option while being able to employ an offense of his own very safely makes it so the defender is forced to interact as little as possible. And that's the disadvantage of these design philosophies. If the attacker has that much power, the best decision statistically for consistent gameplay that a defender can make is interacting as little as possible.
Right? Knee can't interact with Khan. All of these jabs Khan is throwing out, Knee can't duck and punish them because Geese's jab recovers too quickly, right?
Is interacting as little as
even though he back Kenpos this back three from Geese,
that much power, the best
right
decisions
here, he can't throw out the second hit at risk of Khan's extension, the safe extension with meter, launching him and turning into a full combo himself. So he has to take the whiff and do nothing.
Statistically,
he has to let Khan jab him and do nothing.
Is interacting as little as possible with that.
Knee can tell what Khan is doing, but the game is forcing him to not interact with it. He cannot, well, he's applying pressure and control with his defensive movement. He's observing, but he can't counter it. There's no counter. I'm not exaggerating. If you try to duck and launch a Geese jab, it won't happen.
Now, to be fair, we don't know if Tekken 8 will improve the movement system in order to mitigate this.
And that's where I really missed the key detail. I did not predict that Tekken 8 would improve the defensive movement system, right? Improving the ability to move completely changes the fact that the characters have nukes, because the nukes are no longer zero counterplay, right? A lot of people starting the game won't understand that you're not just supposed to throw out your attack, go minus, and then block. Throw out your attack, go minus, and then block, right? You want to mix up your attack timings and play movement as ways of countering your opponent's nukes. There are lots of ways to interact with and control your opponent in this game. What people seem to take issue with is that control is delivered through attack buttons in this game rather than backdashing, sidestepping, etc., which again is the style I preferred. I was a Tekken 7 player. I love Tekken Tag 2. I love this idea of movement as pressure and control, but I can appreciate that even though we've moved to moveset pressure and control, we've returned to the fighting game core philosophy of interacting and outplaying rather than stalling and kind of outpatiencing your opponent. It may be a stylistic taste. It may be a matter of preference. But that is why I'm able to find enjoyment out of Tekken 8. That's why I'm not shilling when I show enjoyment for the game. There's a genuine point of enjoyment in getting to interact a lot and kind of seeing two minds go against each other rather than two players wielding the strongest game mechanics as consistently as possible. It's kind of like the difference between like a card game versus a fighting game. In a card game, it's not that it's skillless, it's that you are wielding the best meta options to build a deck, right? You are applying a lot of high percentage decision-making choices to get to the victory, right? Like, there's Yu-Gi-Oh concepts of like anticipating your opponent having counterplay in their hand, counterplay on the field, right? And Tekken 7 was kind of like that. You would respect a bunch of options, and it led to a bunch of low interaction choices because it was high percentage. What's cool about Tekken 8 to me is that interacting is the high percentage decision. Again, might be a matter of taste.
But based on the trailer, it
kind of like this choice of a haircut at this time. Good lord, man.
Looks like more characters are gaining access to this kind of low-risk offensive pressure. One of Tekken's cornerstones was giving the defender agency if they learn the proper sidestep timings, make tight observations, and execute their reads cleanly.
And the thing is, in Tekken 8, you do have agency like this. You can move before your opponent gets to that plus frame situation in the first place. You can attack before they've put you in the heat dash mix-up, right? Dragunov might be the exception. Elisa might be the exception. Fang might be the exception. But from most of the cast, there's early counterplay. You can prevent the mix-up. And that is so important. You couldn't prevent it. You remember this Claudio situation. You couldn't prevent this. Where is it? Here. Claudio's heat dash. You could not prevent this.
Move itself, when Claudio does his rage drive before he gets that mix-up, that move itself can't be sidestepped or backdashed reliably.
Yeah,
Even if I know
that's right, old
when
PhiDX.
Claudio
Right
is
here.
going to do his
You
rage
can't
drive,
prevent this
I
in
can't
Tekken 7.
sidestep it in
You
either
can prevent this in Tekken 8 because of the buffed movement. Anyways.
The dilemma here, because this new design pattern seems to sell really well.
Okay, and then I talk about why I think the reduction of complexity is a business decision. What I was caught off guard by is how Tekken 8 is more difficult to control. You see this at the high level all the time, right? The same pros who are really, really good, the Ulsons, the Atifs, are dominating like so many tournaments. They've figured it out. The players who were pro in Tekken 7 but need to adjust are struggling to control opponents, to control situations, to control variants. And I thought this game would be completely free-for-all gambling, casino, no control, forced mix-ups, because it would sell well. What I was shocked by is that that is the case at lower level, but at high level, we are seeing people apply stability by understanding the points of interaction and the points of defense that they're allowed to have, right? Let me wrap up what I was saying, and
having
just
a strong character that can hit the opponent and force them into your situations is really fun as someone picking up a game. But I'm of the belief that the competitive scene really drives hype and sustains a game throughout its life. Look at Super Smash Bros. Melee, look at League of Legends. Like, having a strong esport competitive scene where the highest level of play is interesting, deep, and really captivating seems to be really core to keeping a game alive. And I'm worried that this new offensive, aggressive focus that the developers are talking about in interviews is going to be detrimental in the long run to the depth of Tekken and to keeping it alive in the long term. That said, Tekken 7...
Yeah, okay, so that's pretty much the end. And that is where I was wrong, was they found this really cool way to create a beginner-friendly Tekken that still has depth at the top level. And early in Tekken 8's lifespan, people didn't think that was the case. The pro players didn't like the game. Some of them probably still don't, but they didn't like how uncontrollable it felt coming from the Tekken 7 style. And I think what surprised all of us is watching Ulsan and Atif win tournament after tournament, set after set, consistently using this new paradigm of Tekken. So I don't think anybody should feel forced to like Tekken 8. I think that everybody has preferences on how games should play. But I do think that there is an open-mindedness available by looking at the game for what it is, not what Tekken 7 used to be, right? And revisiting other Tekkens and seeing how pressure and control was applied can inspire different ways to play Tekken 8. As somebody who's a fan of the franchise, even though this doesn't have my character, even though the game is not in my optimal style, I am doing it this way because I find it personally more enjoyable to play a game that I enjoy. I think if you don't like the game, it's very okay to leave and move on to other games. There's tons of options out there nowadays. But for those sticking around, for those trying to figure out how to have fun with the game, this might be a way to do it. Like, Tekken 8 is a different game, but it's built on this interaction methodology that tons of old games have done before. Tekken 7 kind of deviated. We're coming back to that. It's just in a different flavor than we saw before. So let me know what you think. I think I was wrong. Was past PhiDX right? Let me know what you think. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.